All right, welcome everyone to the FIC National Coalition meeting, which we aim to have on Fridays. So today we have a few things we would like to discuss. As you know, we did not have our meeting last week, so we are resuming again. So hopefully people remember this week and are able to join us. So first, just some general updates. As you received from my email yesterday, the rapid relief plan, we're still working on that. I have incorporated any of the comments that you have sent me. Please look through the second draft. If you have any additional comments that you would like to add or anything that you feel was missed, please do let me know so we can actually create something that we all have some input through and with. So I will send it out once more after this meeting, but you do have it in your email from last night as well. So please take a look at that. Provide comments, you can do track changes, whatever is convenient for you. Another thing I do want to mention is that we have a new supplier here with us who works on antibacterial formula for apparel, fitness equipment, and whatnot. And I will be providing more information about that through email. So, and that is through Stefan. Stefan, did you want to do a quick hello? I think I saw him online.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Very pleased to meet you. Nasser, nice to see you. There's some familiar faces right there. I'm Stefan. I live in Vancouver, and I have a long background in the fitness industry worldwide with different brands. And I'm very pleased and very happy that Trisha brought me to this council. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connect with people here and learn more about how the Canadian fitness industry is navigating these times. And more than happy to provide any information to anyone who's interested in anti-COVID, fitness apparel, face masks, dumbbells, yoga mats, and those kind of things. But I also work with some other fitness products, reactive training things and stuff. So, you know, whoever wants to connect with me on that, like, please feel free to reach out to me or to Trisha, whatever way works best. I'm also on LinkedIn, so easy to connect.
Great, thank you. And then if you want, you can put in your contact information just in this chat box. And if anybody would like to get in touch with you, they are welcome to. So the first item on the list here, we're going to be talking about advocacy. So we have Peter Seaman from Grassroots on the line here. Peter, would you like to take it away?
Sure, thanks, Trisha and Scott. I think for the purpose of my involvement, other than I know that my colleague Chris Gray usually listens in every week as we've been doing work with FIC since early part of the year. Those of you that might have been on the call a couple of weeks ago when I outlined some ideas around a broader advocacy strategy, we subsequently put out a survey through Trisha to the membership to try and get a sense on different stakeholders in the industry, what their priorities were. You know, the country's a big place. There's different governments you're obviously communicating with for relief and support, not only during these challenging times around COVID, but in general. I must remind everyone that we reached out originally to FIC when we were looking at the opportunities and issues around lobbying for tax credits and things like that. And then we had to pivot quickly when we got into COVID and all the impacts that had on you. One of the takeaways that I've seen so far from the survey respondents was there's a grave concern out there, as all of you are in various stages of reopening, that the fitness industry doesn't get shut down again as it was the first time in a second wave. So in addition to some of the specific issues that we talked about, tax credits, rent relief, other primary issues that were front and center on most people's minds, I saw an overwhelming concern there to ensure that we or the industry could do whatever it could to lobby government and officials to recognize this industry more or less as an essential service with respects to the health benefits it provides to people who attend your gym and take your services that the variety of you offer. So I put a brief outline forward to Scott and Trisha, and essentially what we're doing is we believe very strongly that while you're in different jurisdictions and there may be some provincial advocacy and also federal advocacy, I know we have the possibility of a federal election potentially being triggered this fall, although we don't know, is what can we do in terms of, or what could FIC do to support the industry to put forth some common messaging that everyone could use, so that when you do go and speak to your elected members, whether it's a provincial member or a federal member, and you try and communicate your concerns and tell them and lobby them as to why this industry should get the support you're looking for, that messaging is as consistent as possible. You know, you might all have the same things in minds, but when those elected officials go back to their caucus meetings and talk about the issues, if it's not very consistent and clear to them, they're not going to get it. So what we do for organizations like yours is we frame that narrative under a campaign, quarterback it, if you will, and are available to support people right across the country in everything from your virtual communications and messaging, whether or not we're going to build a website for the campaign to sort of highlight those officials that may be giving you good positive response and support, because what we want to do on this is build momentum and to see that the entire industry can benefit. So Scott, I don't know how far you want me to go in terms of details, but the idea was that you were talking about the possibility and level of interest if members wanted to support anything like this. And I believe you had some models in mind. So I don't want to go too much further in terms of any specific questions you had.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Peter. So we are looking to draft our budget for next year. We have the quote from grassroots in terms of really expanding our lobbying efforts, you know, going provincial, the enhanced federal lobbying. And what we need to do is present this group with really the value proposition. So we need to make sure that we have enough revenue coming into our association to fund not only the lobbying, but the day-to-day operations. We have always prided ourselves on running as lean as possible, and we aim to continue to do that. But we're at a point where we really need to come together, and our little association, you know, we've really galvanized the industry over the last 4 months. You know, I really take inspiration to what Quebec did in terms of getting 160 locations on board and really making a push. So what we aim to do here in the next 2 weeks, we won't be able to present it next week, but we will be able to present it on the 4th, is we want to come with our proposed budget and what is the value proposition and how many locations do we need to have on board to support us. We're looking to create monthly payment abilities, so you don't have to pay in full. It could be a monthly amount. We want it to be as feasible as possible, so we are going to really try to keep our expenses as low as possible, because we're all in this together and we know how hard it is to run a business right now. And we want to show the value proposition. So not only the good work that we believe we can accomplish with grassroots, but also these calls. So one of the things that's really happened over the last 150 days is these calls have almost turned into a roundtable, so to speak. So we want to keep that going. We want to make sure that the people who come to these calls, you know, you quote unquote get your money's worth. Let's share best practices. We aren't going to compete with the education providers in terms of full-blown conferences, but you know, these meetings, we could in essence each week tap somebody on the shoulders to present their best practices. What are they doing that's really successful driving their business? You know, even past COVID, right? So right now we've really been focused on COVID, but how can we keep our industry association sustainable moving forward? So that's what we plan to do in the next 2 weeks. We want to come with our budget. We want to come with our plan. We want to come with our value proposition, and then we can rally the troops and get as many facilities on board as possible. And our objective is to maximize the return on investment in terms of the contributions. So that's it, I think. Trisha, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, that's great. So if anybody would like to present. So we'll structure it so that you can have a 20-minute or so presentation, and then we would continue on with our provincial updates like we do each week. But if you have any industry related information that you'd like to share about best practices, things that you have been doing, that's definitely something that you could connect with me about, and we can make sure that we can share with each other the best way possible. So we will get that going from now on. Yeah. So the next item I would like to mention is I'll actually invite Dino to speak about an idea for a public relations and education committee.
All right, so can you hear me? I got a new setup here. Okay, so kind of talking about what Scott mentioned there in terms of adding value, I just kind of been thinking about some of the added benefits that FIC can have both for the members, but also for the public in general. And being an owner of a facility, I spend a lot of time on social media. And what I've really noticed is our image is tarnished a lot by, I want to say, like medical personalities, famous doctors, famous influencers that train online, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of anti-gym language out there. Some of the tweets, for instance, that I've seen in the last week compared us to strip clubs, right? Things like that. Other things where they're comparing us to packed and crowded bars. So I think we need some type of way to develop the proper messaging, and this might go towards what was the guy talking about there? What do you call it? Lobbying, where we are lobbying and getting that information out, but also just knowledge translation. So I'll give you an example. I'm from Manitoba, but I noticed that Toronto just increased the amount of people allowed in fitness facilities last week, I believe, to 50. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the messaging from CTV was that 50 people were allowed per room, but they didn't talk about how big the room would be and that people would still be social distancing. So there was a lot of backlash because people just assumed you'd be jamming 50 people into a small room. So this type of a committee or a board would take any regulations or any advice given by the government and translate it for the public. So it'd be, if, for instance, I'm in Manitoba, if Manitoba released new policy or new structure for business, our group would then go in and kind of digest that information, tell the owner operators kind of how it applies to them, but also teach the public kind of what this actually means, right? We're keeping them safe. This is how we're doing it. It's not about just jam packing 50 people in a room. It's now we can have 50 people in a large enough room for 50 people. So just an idea, just a thought, something we can kind of talk about, but have some type of a public relations group that just digests public policy in a way that the general public can understand, but also the organizations in each of our provinces can understand, because I'm going on and I'm talking to other gym owners who maybe don't pay attention to the news, right? They don't know, they just see these new policies and they don't know how they apply to them. And actually I have something I'll talk about when I get to the Manitoba update that kind of relates to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the Ontario thing, Dino, just to be clear about that. The announcement was 50 people instead. It used to be 50 people per building, and they reinterpreted their own rule to say it's 50 people per room in a building with physical distancing still maintained. That
Yes.
was absolutely conditional on that.
Exactly.
So that was pretty clear when the government explained it, and the government even framed it as a health thing, like that we can do this healthy and we can get back to a little bit more normalcy. And it was really just applied to the big clubs. But
yes, so where I would go with that is on CTV, on CBC, the headline was just 50 people per room. And then there's threads of 50 people underneath just saying this is irresponsible. All they care about is profit, all this kind of stuff. And I think if we just were able to digest that policy and just have maybe a link to where we're at in Ontario, this is what we're doing and this is how we're keeping you safe, and you could just share that to people, it just might be just that little bit extra that gets us a little bit more goodwill. because yeah, it always gets flipped to the negative. So if we just had something to show them that was positive, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenge is ongoing is to, we know how the media works. So these stories are very easy and clickbait when they're very negatively framed. You've seen a couple more stories in the last couple of weeks of saying like, hey, this member tested, or this associate tested positive in this club in, you know, Brantford. This happened in Ontario. It was on our Ontario call this week. But when you actually read the article, it said it actually did discuss the response to it. The response wasn't highlighted, but it was discussed. And yeah, it's a good idea to try and have this stuff. I would just, my only thing would just be to caution that I think the opportunity the fitness industry has here is to be very, very honest with the public about who we are and what we are. And if it's always too optimistic or too positively framed, that it also loses some steam. So I think it's a very good idea to try and organize this. We've been talking about it for some weeks. So to try and have it organized into some sort of group or responsive group, I think is a great idea.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I was going to say, this is something we were talking about quite at length on the Ontario call the other day, and certainly about the consistent messaging. It's extremely important. And Dino, you just exemplified exactly why that would be. So again, I offer my my services and my time to help coordinate this or involve myself in this as much as possible. And Trisha, I'm sure we can discuss further. And anyone else, we should really come together. This is a big one. This is a really big one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if anybody would like to be a part of this group, please do connect with me so then I can start grabbing and putting people together in order to come up with the right messaging and the information that we want to share moving ahead.
Great, Trisha. We can bring this offline, even talk about our provincial councils and, you know, the role and being basically responsive to, like we said, the clickbait. So we need to have a strategy there. So it's a good topic.
All right, thank you, everyone. So with that in mind, let's go over to our provincial updates. So we'll start in BC, please.
Hey everyone, Jeff here. BC's numbers have kind of gone the wrong way over the past month. We were doing so good for a while, but now it's completely kind of starting to go on the wrong path. We're still pretty busy at the gym. It's August, so we've been open for 3 months now, and it's kind of, you know, August is a slow time anyway, but we are getting a kind of a steady trickle of freezes and cancels because of COVID. So it's just more, you know, just staying on our toes. Everyone's just kind of re-upping their, you know, keeping on top of everybody and on the members and the staff. So yeah, I mean, hopefully things kind of start turning around before it, you know, fall and flu season starts. But hopefully things go well. Gyms, for the most part, are kind of flying under the radar here in the news. There hasn't been any big outbreaks that I know of or that's been on the news. So it's mostly kind of bars, restaurants, and, you know, private parties is where the big spot for outbreaks are in BC and what they're really trying to crack down. So no press right now. Negative press is really good. So at least we have that going for us. That's all I got. You got anything, Carl?
Yeah, no, that's bang on, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. I had the opportunity to do some club visits in the Lower Mainland, just to see how our industry is being represented in the Lower Mainland anyways, in terms of guidelines and policies. And for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised. Not surprised, I guess. For the most part, most organizations in our industry are following the guidelines, especially like the ones I'm speaking of, are the ones that we've set ourselves as a board and council. So that was good, but we do have some one-off locations, as well as some locations that are now just recently opening up in British Columbia that seem to fall short on some of the guidelines that we would expect for facilities. So for those locations, I did reach out and just let them, I shared with them that what our guidelines are as a group. So I shared that with them. And, you know, obviously expenses have increased as a result of following these guidelines. But one thing I think it's important for us all to remember, and what I shared with the groups that weren't necessarily following guidelines, was that the investments that you're making now, you should consider as a brand investment, because more than anything, the guidelines at Club 16 we've put into place, our position has been that we want to be represented as the cleanest, most distant, hygienic facilities, because we know that although we may be feeling extreme pains right now as it comes to overhead and expenses, in the long term, our brand will still be around because of it. So just making sure that that's a good mindset to keep in mind when you're taking a look at the bottom line, and you may be going like this right now, understanding that that's the investment that you're making for the future, not necessarily just now. And on top of that, making sure that the community's safe and healthy. So it's just a flip and a mind switch that I've had to remind myself as I've seen, some of the expenses and overheads coming in, and just feeling that and understanding that, yeah, this is an investment for the future. So our brand is strong in the future. And maybe that's a discussion if you guys are hearing that in other provinces with some of the other brands, making sure that they understand that as well. Because the brands that are doing the right things today, there will be that brand strength and recognition in the future because of it. So that's my advice on there. There's one item that came up in our organization that I was working on Saturday in terms of contact tracing. We had a member notify us from one of our locations that they had tested positive for COVID-19, and out of respect, they wanted to notify us. And so this is the first time this has come up for our organization, and maybe somebody else has dealt with this as well, and give some advice. But the member notified us that they had tested positive for COVID, and within the last 14 days has been within our facility. We reached out to the member and asked for proof, to provide proof that they had tested positive. They weren't willing to do that, so then we contacted the health authorities, because typically we have been hearing from the health authorities first while they do their contact tracing before the member notifies us. And in certain circumstances, the member never notifies us because of the contact tracing and the health authorities reaching out. In this case, when I contacted the health authorities, they said due to consumer protection or I guess some sort of information protection, they couldn't provide me with details, of course, of whether or not the person had tested positive or not, but that no action was needed from us unless they were to contact us. So basically, we will contact you if there's a need for you to inform your members that this person has tested positive and when they were in the facility. So as an organization, we sent out, and I shared with you guys a couple of weeks ago, what the typical process is the health authorities will send you an email to send all the members that could have possibly been exposed, and then you can send your own email. You can't have the two together. So we sent our email in this case, but we still haven't been notified by the health authorities that this has been a possible exposure, and we can't confirm whether the member had indeed tested positive or not for COVID. So it's just a gray area, I guess, and I just wanted to have a brief discussion about it. We did notify in this case, but also I've worked with the health authorities in certain circumstances where they don't actually want notification because they believe that the chance of risk does not exceed the hype or the panic that this could cause. And so all I can demise from my discussions with the health authorities in this case, and my experience dealing with them in other cases, is that likely this member tested positive for COVID, was likely not positive for COVID while he was in our facility, and likely followed guidelines and protocols, and they felt like the chance of risk of exposure was not very high. So I just wanted to share that with you guys in case that came up. And Jeff, I don't know if you guys have had that in the past as well, but that's something that came up. So we did notify through our own means, but health authorities haven't contacted us. Has anyone else dealt with something similar?
Yeah, my kid's dance studio had a bit of a scare last couple weeks ago, and the studio owners, they did a really good job of communicating everything, but it's not up to the health department. Does not want the person doing their own contact tracing. They want to do it all themselves. Yeah. So it shouldn't be them, or we shouldn't be having to reach out to everybody unless they tell us to. So they want to do all the contact tracing and not leave it to the individual or the company.
Yeah, yeah.
I have something from similar with masks. There are some people which are allowed, basically what our policy is, mask in common areas unless you're exercising, and if the distance can't be maintained. So I've been presented with it looks like a torn off piece of paper almost, that they have a medical reason not to wear a mask. Does anybody know how medical excuse to masks should look like, or can we phone the doctor? What is the procedure there?
Is that a member? Is that a staff member?
It's a member, a client who said they don't want to wear a mask. That's what got me kind of wary, because she, from the start on, said she didn't want to wear one. And we said, in the common area, we'll have to, locker room, etc. And then the next thing she came, and she said she had it looked like not a recipe, like a prescription, but similar. And she said that she was exempt from wearing a mask for a medical reason. And I said, well, I'm sorry that then we would have to extend and freeze her contract, because we couldn't allow it at this point. And I haven't heard back from her.
So Angela, that card you probably saw, the anti-mask movement has made a standard card that people can print. And that's what has been circulating. So I don't know if your person would be this way, but there is a group of anti-maskers that started in Ontario that's now a national group that gives everybody this card that says, I have one of these. It's a standard thing that they print out and they try to flash to businesses so they don't have to wear masks. I don't know if that's what you saw or not. But yeah, that's the challenge, is that some people, if they are they have their own reasons for it, they're trying to use a medical reason for it. But I believe what you did, like having, as a business, you can still, just say you'll put them on freeze and deal with it that way. Other gym operators could talk about how to deal with that accordingly, but that's probably what you saw in terms of that card.
Has anybody seen this card and could scan it? If you've seen this card, could you scan it and make it available how it looks? I haven't seen it, so other than what she showed me.
Yeah, what I've done is, my suggestion is, if somebody says they have a condition where they can't wear a mask, then I just talk to them and say, if you have a condition that you can't wear a mask, you probably are more at risk and you probably shouldn't be here, right? So that would be an opportunity to have that conversation with them. Chances are they'd have a real doctor's note or something. And again, the doctor would probably suggest that they stay home. So this anti-mask movement, there is a card, and I'll dig it up and I'll see if I can find the link to it. But I've seen it here too as well, because they're just, people don't want to be inconvenienced. So,
thanks, Dino.
I have enough clients myself. Sorry, I have enough clients myself, if you guys can hear me, that I get this problem all the time too with masks. I'm somebody who comes from autoimmune disease himself. I've taken care of this, and I don't expect other people to do other things to protect me. I protect myself. But when they come into my business and they ask me about this stuff, I say the exact same thing. If you're immune compromised and you have a problem with this, but you can't wear a mask, I can't have you here. I'm sorry. The reason we're all putting on masks is because of people who are immune compromised. And if you can't put on the mask because you're compromised, then you probably should just be at home yourself. And that's what I say every time. I said, please talk to your doctor and clarify what it is that you need to go through to do this. If everybody has to put one on in my place, why are the people that we're putting them on for exempt from putting them on? That's just what I come down to at my establishment.
That's a really good point, Jay. And actually in Edmonton, they had started City of Edmonton providing cards to those who were unable to wear a mask, supposedly, but that actually got shut down in 5 days. So there is a reason for that. And I think both Angela and Jay brought up, again, Dino, good points about if you are somebody who can't wear one, you may not want to be doing this sort of activity right now. So this is something we will monitor. So if anybody comes through with any other comments on this or any situations, please do let me know so we can share this information with the group. So that said, let's move on to Alberta.
There is one thing, Trisha.
Okay, so yeah, really interesting conversation, because there's a blend of so-called human rights and the duty to follow the rules. So in Alberta, it's been a relatively slow week in the news, which is good. just on social, we continue to see a lot of positive images, and we're trying to support those the best we can. There has been a few studios that, you know, they just can't seem to help themselves. They have to post the selfie at the end of the workout with everybody hugging and just disregarding the physical distancing rules. So those folks have been reported. They had their one strike and now they're being reported. And we also had a very positive meeting with the Ministry of Economic Development. So they have committed to a number of action items. One of them is to actually give us the definition of what quote unquote high intensity means, so that studios could potentially look at their workouts and make the appropriate changes to the type of workout to reduce from 3 meters to 2 meters. They said they are not open to reducing high intensity to 2 meters at this time, likely due to the bad press the cycling event had, but they are open to actually giving us guidelines on what the actual definition of high intensity is. The grant for Prescription to Get Active is looking promising, and they have committed to making an introduction to us to the Alberta Medical Association, which is really positive. So there's a lot of good things happening. I'll also share just a story. We got hit socially, we meaning gym movement. A member blasted us just saying, you know, the staff are terrible, nobody's wearing masks, nobody's following the rules, and you know, they just made it sound like a real big problem. And so we shared the feedback with the manager, and she got real defensive and said, this is absolutely not true. Everybody's wearing masks, everybody's following the rules. And so I just bring it to this group because you might get feedback like that. And so what we are doing moving forward when we get feedback is we're going to take it offline, but we're going to reach out and get specifics. So what time, where were you, which staff, because, you know, in this case, what we found was the member was talking about a trainer in the office by themselves. Well, they don't need to wear a mask if they're sitting in the office by themselves on their computer with the door closed. There was another situation where a trainer was working out, so their own personal workout with their spouse. So they weren't physically distancing, but they were working out with their spouse. So they don't need to wear a mask and they don't need to physically distance. So part of it is educating. You know, we want to make sure that we thank them for their feedback, but we want to make sure that we don't make something that's a small thing into a big thing. So we're trying to get as specific as we can, but we do take those conversations offline, because if you just read the post, it's kind of like clickbait. You just think, oh my God, that club's a disaster, when the reality is it's actually complying to the rules really well. So I just wanted to share that. And that's it for Alberta.
Thanks, Scott. Let's go to Saskatchewan.
One quick thing for Scott, if I could. Alberta Health Services was in touch with us recently for our cardio equipment with the same high intensity, non-high intensity 2 meter to 3 meter desire. And they said that they were going to be revisiting their current recommendation and actually looking to mandate those cardio sections, which for you, they're not going to be unlike ours where they're in rows, and we've disabled them to be 2 meters apart, but we haven't disabled them to be 3 meters apart. And they're also referencing in multiple directions. So just let maybe your teams know that they're probably going to bring forward 3 meters for those environments in the open part of the club, as they're going to likely lean towards high intensity being the, I don't know, the way that they're describing cardio activity. So if I hear anything in the meantime on that, I'll let you know, but because we're trying to follow up with them, but we're getting active on it just because we don't want to get blindsided by having to run around and make a whole bunch of further changes to how those clubs are set up.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Jeff. That's excellent. I don't see Sky or Bilal on, so we will move on to Manitoba.
Okay, Manitoba, we are not doing so hot right now. We got lots of cases going up. We got some hot spots. And our province just rolled out a new 4-color system, I guess, in terms of like where we're at. There's a green, yellow, orange, and red. This is kind of where advocacy is very important, because if you look at the different levels, Manitoba's sitting in yellow right now, so we're okay, but they have parts of Manitoba are in the orange area, so we're starting to see capacity limits on certain businesses again. And then if you look at red, it actually has closing businesses as part of the measures. Do I think we'll hit red? Hopefully not. But I don't think there's a scenario where gyms should be closing, period. And it does show here that that is part of their action plan, is if we hit red, gyms, fitness centers, recreation facilities, we're lumped in with casinos, we're lumped in with theaters, and we're lumped in with beverage rooms, and we would all be closing. So that's where the advocacy is very important, because I think our messaging needs to show that we don't belong in that group in the first place. We're healthcare, we're preventative medicine, so that's kind of where we need to sit. In terms of kind of where we're at, our test positive rate is climbing. So we're almost at 2%. We're at 3% in some areas. So we do have some localized outbreaks. In terms of how things are changing here, not much. I plan on just reassuring my members that we're doing everything we need to. I own a smaller club, so I have these discussions with each member. But yeah, I think the messaging needs to be clear that we are safe. And yeah, other than that, I don't know what else to update about Manitoba. Just I hope things don't get any worse. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Dino. Let's go to Ontario.
All right, I can speak on that. So Ontario has been trudging along. It's been a couple weeks now. We've been open. Everybody's kind of getting a sense of what the new norm is. From what I understand, from having visited multiple clubs around the city and my own facility, the uptake's been kind of slow, certainly slower than we anticipated, particularly with the older demographic. There's a genuine concern about coming back. What has been noticed and what we noted at the call on Tuesday with the provincial call was that PT doesn't seem to have been affected very much, as many people who use PT have been coming back. I think we've seen about a 90 to 95% return. Literally only one or two of the hundreds that we have not come back. So that's been a very positive sign, and something I did anticipate, but still was surprised at the sheer take numbers. So that's been pretty positive. Provincially, we've been under 100 for most of last week. This week we popped over 100 cases again, with just a couple of unfortunate deaths. So it seems to be the measures that have been put in place are working, and we're all quite buoyed by that information as we move forward. And then really what the biggest conversation that we had on Tuesday with the provincial call was, again, as we touched on at the beginning, getting more representation. We've been very much impressed and certainly happy to see what happened in Quebec with that organization. So we take inspiration from them. So well done, Quebec. You've inspired Ontario. We're there. And so we want to emulate certain similar practices and similar results in expanding our members, because the message hasn't been consistent. The media, as was touched on by Dino earlier, the media has been presenting articles from various operators throughout the city, in particular Toronto, that is just not consistent with our messaging, which makes me very nervous. And I think it should make all of us very nervous. Not that they're saying anything opposite or counter to what we're saying, but the fact that it is not consistent, I think it's just confusing to the public, and we need to present that very united front. So the kind of consensus amongst us was to expand our membership base and get everybody on board with a similar message. The other big news, again, that was discussed earlier by Nick, mentioned, was the increase from 50 people total per building to 50 per room. Again, whilst respecting proper physical distancing rules. That's been a huge boon, and I think that Chuck has a lot to be congratulated for, as that was essentially his initiative and more or less his doing. So if he's on the line, please congratulations to Chuck, and please kudos from all of us, Chuck. And we'd love to hear from you if you have more to say on the topic. Other than that, I think Ontario was pretty quiet. Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention earlier regarding the exemption cards. As I understand it, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, you can get an official exemption card in Ontario, okay, from the Ministry of Health, that will prevent you from, that does not require you to wear a mask anywhere. And that's due to not necessarily autoimmune issues, but rather some kind of respiratory illness, COPD or asthma, or even anxiety is another one that's come up. So it can get a little bit wonky, but I haven't heard it challenged yet. If someone has a case, I'd love to hear it, because I think we'd all be very keen on hearing how that was handled. I think that's it for Ontario. If anyone else has anything to add, please do. And that's it for me. I'm off.
Thank you so much. Then let's move on to Quebec, and we'll have Nathalie, who is our new VP of Fitness Industry Council of Canada, to take it away.
Thank you, Trisha. Hi, everybody. So the update for Quebec would be one revolving around masks, but for staff. So our workplace safety people, the CNESST is what they're called, have apparently been powering through the emails of all of the gyms, letting them know. And we knew this was in the background, but we were kind of, I'll be honest, playing under the radar, hoping that it wouldn't come really to fruition and to strict policy, but it has been done into strict policy now that all staff must wear medical masks if they can't be within 2 meters of social distancing, which is challenging for those of you and all the other gyms that spent a lot of money on these really sweet, reusable, branded cloth or whatever mask that they bought for everybody. The reason that they're saying that's the case behind that is because there's no control or no regulation around all of those other masks versus those ones can be regulated, and they're easier to form around the nose. They provide, therefore, more safety and more comfort for the employees. And so I would say that, I mean, and I spoke to Claire at Energy Cardio, and she was like, well, they're staying 2 meters apart. When the personal trainers are the one where it's a big deal with that. The other staff, it doesn't seem to be much of an issue because they're able to stay within or outside of the 2 meter of physical distancing, but personal trainers in particular, that's a challenge. So at about 60 cents in bulk, this is going to be significant for all of the gyms that now have to provide these to their staff. And I think, I'm pretty sure it's about 1 for every 4 hours of shift or something like that. And so not only have they already spent money on something else, but on top of it, they got to do that. Now they have to start providing these. So Claire said at Energy Cardio, I mean, it's a big chain. There's, you know, lots of clubs at Energy Cardio, but she got 8 of those emails. I don't know if that includes if that's the 8 gyms that she happens to own within the brand, but she got it a lot. And so that means if the CNSST is doing that, that means they could start doing inspections related to that. So we're going to have to pass that word around and see if everybody's on board when it comes to that. So that's the communication that's come out in the last little while. And just to let you know, so I have had a few questions from some of our members relating to masks and people not being able to wear masks. Here, some of the discussion, again, was not for physical elements, but people with intellectual disabilities or people with communication disabilities or things like that, saying that for them, it's just not something that makes sense. And what I've been saying is if somebody comes in and says that they have a condition that forbids them from wearing the mask, the first thing I would say is, thank you so much for sharing that. Let me double check that it's in your file. When's the last time we filled out a PARQ? If this is something that's affecting you, your ability to move and exercise and be in this facility, we actually need to know about it. So thank goodness we're a health facility, as opposed to if they walk into, I don't know, the Bay and say they can't wear a mask, they don't have those possibilities. We're in a bit of a different space here where we can actually provide a service towards that, as opposed to make it a confrontation towards mask or no mask, but say, well, as your health and fitness provider, this is a great opportunity for us to get to understand your needs better and see and make sure that we are fulfilling them, and see if there's something that we need to adapt in what is recommended to you for your physical activity or something like that. So I've been trying to spin it in that way, rather than when they just go buy a pair of shoes where they don't have that possibility. But us being health and fitness facilities, we do have that. So that's been the recommendation here, and so far it's been going okay. And that's it for Quebec.
Quickly to what Nathalie just said about updating the PARQ, that isn't it recommended, not only recommended, but legislated that they have to be renewed every year? Because that's what we do. So
So that's my whole thing of like, if they have especially if they're coming in with a physical condition, if they have a physical condition, then we should know about it. And so to me, it's an opportunity to broaden the discussion and make sure that that's on file, and make sure that we're aware of it, so we can deal with it, not just relating to masks, but to relating to their health in general. So that's been the way that I've tried to support them in using it as an opportunity for better service, as opposed to a confrontational conversation.
Great,
So sorry, to answer Dino's question, no, not in Quebec. Face shields are not an option. In Quebec, for consumers, face shields are not an option. As it relates to staff, it has to be mask and face shield, depending on what it is. It's actually both, or goggles. In most places, if people want to wear cloth masks, they're triple protecting. So it's medical mask, cloth mask, face shield, or goggles. And at that point, they're in a hazmat suit. So we're kind of there in Quebec. But we've been under 100 infections for about 10 days now. So it seems to be working as far as we know.
Great, thank you. And then, Dino, I see you have another comment here about coming up with a cancellation package or protocols on, does anybody currently have or has developed a cancellation or protocol for their members?
We are in the process of fine tuning it, but we have, as some of you know, we have our Gym Movement Go and our remote training. So we have the ability to offer that for a discount to existing members. So if somebody wants to cancel and it's because they don't feel safe, then obviously we try to get them, active and continue to exercise and stay connected with them. We've allowed them to freeze, but our concern is that we're just going to keep kicking that can down the road, and then they'll come back and want another 3-month freeze, and then want another 3-month freeze, and we actually never, they're basically canceled. So we're trying to figure out how do we get some revenue, but most importantly, not just the revenue side of it, but you stay connected with them as a human. So through the Gym Movement Go or our remote training, making sure that we still have that and they're still part of our community.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up there is just, I think it's goes against our messaging if we are allowing people to cancel for those reasons, if they're not legitimate reasons, if that makes sense, right? We as owner operators know that our facilities are safe, exercise is important, and canceling for those reasons isn't actually a real reason. They might be canceling out of fear, but the fear is false. So I think it's on us. We're just not educating them, right? They just don't have the same knowledge that we have. So maybe we need some kind of a package or something when we're approached with someone who's like, hey, I want to put my 30-day cancellation in or whatever it is. Because of these fears, maybe we need to say, do you know the benefits of continuing? What is your plan? Do you plan on doing this remotely? All that kind of stuff. That's just kind of my thought. Is if we are allowing them to cancel, then we're basically saying they're right and our messaging is wrong.
What we do here in my studio is we ask that somebody calls and wants to take a break, as they call it mostly. We either offer virtual training or outdoor training, which is of course in Manitoba soon not be possible anymore. but we offer the outdoor training and virtual training. Otherwise, we ask them what do they think we can call, and we give this option like once. When do you think we could call you to come back? And so we start when we reopened June 15th. We had some people, and so we said we call you end of August and see how you are. And from at that point, I'm gonna offer them, you know, basically you need to come back, or you need to let us know when you can come back. But we haven't so far haven't had to cross that bridge. So.
And I see that Paula actually mentioned quite in line with the fact that this is the time to engage your members and make sure that you have options available for them. Sam, I see in the chat that you've actually had quite a few ideas of how to talk to customers when it comes to approaching them about maybe virtual options if they can't come to the club and things like that. Do you want to go over some of the things that you have mentioned in the chat there?
Yeah, I was mentioning a little bit what Energy Cardio has been doing, and I know Nathalie also threw in some of their stuff. Last week, last meeting, Evelyn was mentioning that they are doing, they're charging the cancellation fees, but they're also doing a flexible return so that if clients are returning within 2 years, they are refunding or at least reattributing that fee that they charge for the cancellation. So this way they're maintaining that kind of client relationship and not losing them. Just to piggyback off of what Paula says, I think right now the most important thing is flexibility, but you also have to talk to each member. Like customer service 101 right now, I think is really have individual conversations, talk to them, figure out what your general platform is going to be, whether you're reaching out, you know, bi-weekly, once a month, whether it's an easy message out, whether it's just a check-in with your clients like a lot of you guys were doing already during COVID to keep them engaged with your gym and your community within your gym. I think that has to be the most important thing, is that the message is the caring, because people, if they're scared, they're not going to return no matter what you say as a business standpoint. The message has to be that they're coming back because they feel safe, because the community connection is there, and kind of having those one-on-one conversations.
We also do one more thing. We invite clients who are not comfortable coming back to come back when we know there's only 1 or 2 people on the floor, and we give them some options, come and tour the facility again and talk to staff and see what measures we have put into place to keep them safe.
Great. Are there any other ideas that anybody would like to mention?
So I'll jump in, Paula, Comfort. I'm happy to put some things together for everyone. I've been, I don't know, I posted an article on LinkedIn and Facebook this week that really resonated to me. And so, of course, I went out and bought the book called The Molecule of More. So great book to really think about consumer behavior and to really think about what are the next 120 days going to bring for all of us between now and the end of 2020. So I know this is a time where most people are probably holding back and not spending any money on marketing. But I have to tell you, I mean, social media is one thing, but there's an opportunity here for us to really, really engage with a world and a market that really needs us, as we all know. But we have to do it so carefully. And so the customized, personalized approach, as everyone's saying, is the right way to go. So I'm happy to put together some thoughts and some ideas on the scripts, but then you have to personalize those, as we know. I've done lots of sales training over my years, and really you have to put yourself and your own brand into it. But there's a lot of key words, I think, that need to be in the copy and in the marketing going forward. Things like, you know, fulfillment, resilience, connection. I mean, people are on this treadmill right now, and nobody knows how to stop. And so I think you have to really think about your copy and your messaging, because we have to tread so lightly, knowing the fear and knowing the uncertainty of everyone's future. And so I'm happy to put something together on some of these thoughts. I was going to write an article for Graham actually on this tomorrow for FitBiz Weekly, which I'll probably do. But I'm happy to share with Trisha some of my thoughts and my ideas on some marketing, some sales skills. I mean, people have been so shut down that I'm finding when I'm talking to candidates in my business and I'm talking to clients, that people have kind of lost their articulation and their sort of service, leadership in a way. So I'll just put some thoughts together on that and I'll send it. And then each of your brands, obviously customize it yourself, but there's some really great messaging that I think we can all use, coupled with, of course, the committee that's going to work on, why exercise prescription and exercise is medicine. So I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Paul.
It's Dave Hardy. I just wanted to make a little comment. Dino, I was disturbed to hear about what's going on in Manitoba in terms of the different levels, and again, fitness clubs being included in the red level. One of the things as an industry we may want to start the conversation about, and maybe it's worthwhile everyone having a look, is the same problem has happened down in Victoria area, Melbourne area in Australia, where they've gone through a second wave and now lockdowns, but they've done it by way of a curfew. So they put an 8 p.m. curfew in place, and that seems to be allowing restaurants and gyms and other places to stay open while curbing that growth in the 20 to 29-year-olds that seem to be the big spreaders. So I'm not suggesting that's something we jump on today, but it may be worthwhile as an industry just having that in our back pocket as another alternative. I also agree strongly that we shouldn't be lumped in with bars, but that's another issue. I think sometimes you just have to have other alternatives, and that may be one worth looking at.
Just speaking a little bit directly to this, and I think this is, I have a little bit of insight on that one. I know what happened in Alberta was once that outbreak happened in the spin studio, there was a couple of doctors that got together and wrote another letter about a 3 meter or 4 meter distancing in aerobics that didn't go public, but they went and I think they pushed that. So just understanding what happens on the medical world and the mix between what happens from the healthcare world and then what public perception is, and then what all of our perceptions are. And just, I know everyone's very pro about this stuff, but I think we have to be very realistic and honest about that as well, that there's a balance to be had between those two things. As much as we wanted to say, hey, this is healthcare, everyone come on back, there is I think everyone has to be very honest with themselves too about what the risks are, like what the actual increased risks are in gyms, and then but the message has to be, but these are all the things gyms are doing to minimize those risks, and gyms are in a much better position to minimize those risks than bars or strip clubs or any of these things that they're getting linked into. But I think if we don't acknowledge what those risks are first and honestly, and why the healthcare world has identified gyms as higher risk, and it's because of increased breath rate, and it's because that people are breathing deeper and more in a gym no matter what. That's just a reality, and that's how this thing spreads. But here is how we're minimizing all these, and that's how we're dealing with it. I think that there has to be some balance in that message, not just a, hey, rah rah, gyms are amazing, everyone, there's no risk, it's safer than everything else. There has to be a balance there if we want to gain that public perception. Otherwise, I think we're being unrealistic about why these people feel this fear.
Yeah, and I think we discussed previously the week before last that we are going to be structuring the story, right? Providing more than just the rah-rah, but these are the reasons why we can help you. So that's something that we want to be able to provide as a outlook, right? Before we wrap up today, I do want to let everybody know that URSA does have a summit coming up. It is the URSA Innovation Summit, and as FIC members, you will be able to get a 10% discount to that summit if you are interested. So I will be sending out information for that as well. And then in the chat box, I see that Dave has provided the article about the curfew. So you can check that out. And lastly, if you are currently not a member of FIC, we highly, highly encourage you to do so, because that's what's going to allow us to continue having these conversations and making sure that we take care of the things that we need to deal with together as an industry. So in the chat, I put down the information to our membership page. It is, Carl's right, it's a solid investment, as many of you who have been on our calls know, and then we hope to provide more and more information through our mini webinars that we're going to be including to our meetings here. So please do make sure that you become a member in order for us to be able to continue doing this. We are a lean machine. We understand that it's hard for many businesses, but this is something that is important for you to support public policy. So that being said, thank you everybody, and we will connect again very soon.
Thank you.